Well, good morning, and thank you very much for joining us. I am Yori Folarin. My guest this morning is Mr. Malaki Ugumadu. He's it's president. It's not chair. It's president, Committee for the Defense of Human Rights.
I think you're already a member of CHR by association.
Great to have you, Malaki.
My
Thank
pleasure
you
to
very
be here.
much.
Thank you very much.
Malaki is also an activist, lawyer, and has been so for quite a while. And I'm sure Malaki has one or two things to say about the ongoing situation in South Africa. One of the two things that we shall be looking at today, well, first of all, as you know, there's some sort of updates, slight updates. Two things we wanted to talk about. On the one hand, there's the whole South African thing, and then on the other hand, there's the P&ID, that projects and what is it? P&ID, the $9.6 billion guys. That it turns out, if you saw a report that's circulating, it's a Bloomberg Business Week report, an investigative piece, and their title, their caption was, is one of the world's biggest lawsuits built on a sham? And then they proceed to tell the story of an ailing Irishman, hoping to make his last score in Nigeria. The deal fell through, and we'll go there and we'll look at all of that. And in the meanwhile, in its wake, the Attorney General of the Federation has written to the Governor of Central Bank and about 13 ministers we're reading this morning, asking them that any contract worth $5 million that was executed under your watch, please send all the details to my office. That's the AGF's office. And he explained that he was determined to prevent the kind of situation that happened with P&ID. And so he needs to see what's going on financially, contractually, with all of these contracts, so he can be in a position to nip all these things in the bud. So there's a sense in which that, is a part of the fallout from here. Malaki, but to go to the South Africa thing first, we've been doing it from Monday. That's how sort of serious the matter has been, and people have wanted to talk about it. First of all, we have a report, the latest round of demands.
The recent violence was reportedly sparked by an alleged drug dealer shooting and killing a taxi driver, which led to South African taxi drivers and locals instantly retaliating and taking the matter into their own hands. This has degenerated into diplomatic tensions between the two Africans' biggest economies, Nigeria and South Africa. Nigerians recently attacked South African businesses in retaliation.
All of us, we are very angry. That's why we are out today to protest that this should not be continued again. We have South African citizens inside this country. We leave them, we did not go. Their investments are so much here. They are here. We did not hurt them. Why must they hurt our people?
I am not in support of violence, because to me it's a form of violence. But one thing is this: Nigerians are the most accommodating people in Africa. That's a fact. For them to have reacted at this time, they seem to have been pushed to the wall.
But they are not alone. Other African countries from Ghana to Ethiopia and the African Union have called on South African President Cyril Ramaphosa to take action. Citizens from across the continent continue to voice their anger on social media, with some threatening retaliation as hundreds of University of Zambia students protested outside the South African High Commission.
I'm not happy with the behavior of the South Africans. Each and every time they want to wake up and start killing people. Enough is enough. Nigerians, Malawans are all Zambian, we're all Africans. We are not going to tolerate this nonsense. Enough is enough.
We are tired of being beaten every day. We're all Africa. Why must we be afraid to go to South Africa? Which South Africa has ever been beaten in Zambia? Which one? We want the ambassador to address us. We are tired. Enough.
Alleged as the cause of the attack.
Nigerian organizations also dismissed allegations that Nigerian nationals living in South Africa are involved in criminal activities.
We, the Nigerian student community in South Africa, are not participating in any form of crime as alleged as the cause of the attack, but are here to study and improve the African continent at large.
In recent years, South Africa has grappled with xenophobia, refugees and migrants have had to defend themselves from violent attacks by some South Africans.
We further appeal to the African Union to engage the South African government to find solutions to this ugly demon of hatred of other Africans living in South Africa and ensure the safety of everyone therein. We call on all African migrants communities to respect the laws of our host nation and remain law-abiding.
Immigration to South Africa from across Africa and from parts of Southeast Asia picked up in the early 1990s, spurred by the end of the apartheid rule and the economic boom that followed. Ibrahim Shita, TVC News.
Okay, then, well, there's that, and there's also what we've been hearing from our side here in Nigeria. The Minister of Foreign Affairs, you know, he's tweeted, that was discussed widely on social media. Enough is enough, and we're also exploring compensation that they will be asking for. We will be asking for compensation. But it's interesting from what we've heard that the South Africans have pushed back that, well, when it comes to compensation, there's nothing in our laws, Malaki, to give you know, foundation to that. It's probably a diplomatic way of saying that, no, we're not buying that. In spite of the good things, we've heard the South African president speak. I was just saying that 83 protesters have been arraigned in South Africa. Police also dispersed, you know, protests against South African businesses, you know, leading to all the other things that you know about. But coming back to the situation here, their laws do not permit compensation. So all of these are still diplomatic maneuverings, right?
I imagine that such statements are carefully made to moderate the liability that will naturally become a consequence of the action and the damage already caused. But diplomacy must have a limit, otherwise it becomes more infuriating and more damaging, not just to the process of reconciliation if possible, but one that will enable you heal the wounds that are already created. I make this point because for so long there has been very wrong steps put forward to attend to this situation. Do not forget that on the heels of this whole crisis was the very indicting statement of the Deputy Commissioner of Police.
Deputy Police Minister in South Africa.
And you know, in this age and time when you have very robust documentation, the IT world, a lot of things were thrown up, including the statements, very earlier statements of the president himself, Ramaphosa, which was not too far from what the deputy Senate president, deputy police commissioner was saying.
Malaki, one thing that they are all saying, both the deputy and I've also listened to the police minister himself, they said that this is not xenophobia, this is criminality. And so that's the handle that they're grabbing and say, xenophobia is out. But it's very confusing because the president, I can't remember if he exactly said it is xenophobic, but he did say it is intolerable and condemnable.
Yes. So,
you know, so they are saying, stop saying xenophobia.
So
it's criminality.
You see why I quarreled with the much you could do with diplomacy, and particularly diplomatic languages and expressions. In diplomacy, there is no yes. There is perhaps. There is no. There is maybe. So you are diplomatic when you find a way to navigate an otherwise complex situation.
I want him to keep the door open still.
And then strike a balance, no matter how convoluted the issues have become. So for me, there is a limit to which, because the more diplomatic you are with respect to the facts, concrete, cold facts on ground, the more you infuriate the people, offend the sensibility of the victims, and therefore whittle down the prospect of reconciliation. So now, if you say it is an outright criminality, let's even deal with that. What about recent outright criminalities that have happened in your country, including the cold murder of one Mrs. Chuku in less than 2 months ago, if my memory serves me right? That is the assistant director in the insurance industry that came for a conference and was killed in her hotel room. There was yet, soon after that, there was yet a young man, and I watched that too, who was murdered by policemen right in his house. And he kept insisting before he was killed that this is the same attack on we Nigerians. Unfortunately for the police, the younger sister who was right there in the house videotaped the whole thing. And so many others.
Yes.
So on the last account, we understand that not less than 200 Nigerians have had their lives cut short by these xenophobic attacks.
In the recent past.
In the recent past. And this is not peculiar to Nigeria. It is also applicable to other nationals.
It is.
Particularly African citizens.
I mean, so much so, sorry to interrupt you, Malaki, so much so that I think a Zambian plane was set alight.
Yes,
it was torched.
that was 2 days ago, yesterday.
Yes. Not that one is recommending that line of action, but it's to show you the depth of feelings and also to buttress the point you're making that, look, Nigerians, maybe we're more than most there, I don't know, but Nigerians certainly have been taking the brunt of the xenophobia from South Africa, but we're not alone. There are other people too. At least the Zambians too were as touched as for their own citizens to have done, which I'm sure their own authorities would not approve of, because 2 wrongs never make a right. But it's just emphasizing what you're saying, that other Africans, look, the president and all his cabinet and everybody, they're going to try to be pushing back against the idea. But you hear commentary that the problem in South Africa seems to be that they have a complex, a peculiar kind of complex against their fellow black African brothers. People are observing that Africans are not the only foreigners in South Africa. The others, non-African immigrants, don't get it as bad. So whether it is right, whether it is wrong, whether it's a perception, at least it's out there for the South Africans to, address. And Malaki, something else I wanted to get your impression on is the fact that the governments know that this is not helping us at all. The government of South Africa knows. But you see, governments superintend over their people. Now, if you go down into South Africa and ask the ordinary folk, they have the, I want to say, misconception that it is all these foreigners that are taking our jobs. Look at me, I'm hungry. Look at where I'm living. I don't have any money. The foreigners have all the money. The foreigners, they get all the jobs. So, look, no matter how enlightened we are, and we know that you're getting this twisted a bit, it doesn't matter to the guys that might, unfortunately, include the police who have these resentful feelings. So how far are our government and their government going to be able to go in the light of this misconception, which is very, very strongly held in South Africa among the ordinary folks that are not perhaps as educated as the rest?
Well, I think to dislodge that misconception, which is, like you said, a very strong notion within the South African indigenous communities.
Yes.
Is to pose the question, and the way we do it is to attempt an orientation. I'm talking of the South African
themselves,
country itself.
Yes. If it is so minded.
Yes. To what extent does that justify the killings? If you're talking about taking of jobs, will killing, maiming, and disruption correct that? Certainly the answer is no. So there's a base problem, either in that misconception you talk about or in the approach of redressing that misconception.
Okay.
As a way of reaction.
Because the simplistic approach, I might suggest,
yes,
is simply, I would guess, is that, look, if we can just scare them all away, kill them or let them run, go away, then the jobs will be available for us again. Seems to be the simplistic notion they have.
Now, I'm very deliberate on this issue because I sincerely would want for us to deal with the issues very clearly as they are. I'm interested in tracing the relationship between South Africa and Nigeria in particular, to expose the poverty of the situation we have found ourselves and why that has become not just unacceptable, but very scandalizing.
You know, forgive me, Malaki.
Yes.
Because we've been speaking about this thing from Monday,
yes,
we definitely have covered that of all people in Africa, it is not South Africans.
Okay.
You know, we've gone over that extensively.
Very well.
How we did it because they were our brothers.
We commend
now they're not see why are they doing this? No,
including the fact that even their vice president, Thabo Mbeki, found refuge in this country, in the homes of known Nigerians.
So
if I mention Thabo Mbeki, I am referring to Thabo Mbeki generically to imply that so many other cadres, so many other comrades. I wasn't a student there, but we did read as part of the conscious Nigerian student participation in that whole situation.
We had South African students in our Nigerian universities.
contributing monies, pocket monies, to ensure that the Nigerians stood up against world powers in resentment about what was going on in South Africa, and so on and so forth. Scholarships were given, people were fed, loans were made available. There were all sorts of assistance.
What do you think of the idea that it is not those cadre, it is not that cadre of South Africans that are actually doing this? It's the people who feel left behind, and they are in the majority, who, as you know, you don't need me to tell you, are disappointed, first of all, with their own government. They think that their own government is not doing enough. Look at after we say we are not under white domination anymore. How has this helped me? I'm still living in squalor. So they have their own internal problem. And when you now consider that over 5 million immigrants have moved into South Africa, they just are looking for answers. And because they're not as erudite, the ordinary South Africans, you know, regular, we're not talking about anybody who's enlightened, because most regular South Africans, I've been searching online, they say that this is embarrassing. I see them say that I'm embarrassed to be a South African the way my people are doing. So they're dealing with the majority, which are the regular, you know, I don't know how to put them. I don't want to have any disrespect for the South African nationals.
I can see your insistence on dealing with that question, because at the end of the day, by and large, at the end of the day, we will have to deal with it. If you're going to take it at the level of what the elitists notion about what's going, we might not get
and then scrutinize what they are saying back to
Correct.
us.
So,
that is criminality, it's not xenophobia.
Yes, so, and I've pointed out that, look, even the criminal aspects of what has been happening without the xenophobic attacks, if you want to separate them, has not been dealt with. There have not been convictions. Impunity strives when an act of criminality or any form of misbehavior occurs without serious reprimand.
Yes.
What you do without dealing with it is to empower the perpetrators to be able to do more. That is what has been happening. I'm giving instances or cases that have not been attended to. We cannot, in Nigeria today, even as lawyers, point to convictions, because you could argue that xenophobic attack does not constitute a criminal activity in South African law today. But there are clear criminal legislations on murder, on arson, on willful destruction of properties. So how many convictions have been secured since 1995, particularly from 2008, when we started recording these incremental attacks on fellow Africans by nationals of a country who ought to be eternally grateful to the entire African continent for what they did in unison to bring them out of their bondage. We've not seen much. What that does is to fortify, legitimize, and validate that notion you talk about. That, look, these people are just here to take away our jobs from us.
Yeah.
And if you allow me to go back to that question you raised, it is to say that, look, there is a historical dimension or gap that was not properly handled, even from the successes recorded from the defeat of the apartheid struggle. And that has consolidated and assumed a life of its own in the life of these ordinary South Africans that you're talking about.
Who are largely quite, I don't know. I was going to say that the people who are doing this are ignorant because there are South Africans who are saying that they are embarrassed.
Yes.
Joshua, good morning, sir.
Oh, good morning, sir.
Thank you for calling in. Good morning.
Good morning to your guest.
Malaki.
Yes, if they say it's criminality, I will agree in part to that line of thought. And it's just to say that it's failure of government. If it is criminality, as South Africa is saying, they should have done something like what the US did. You know, going through the process of following up these gangs, criminal gangs, and at least arresting them or bringing them to book. We saw that in US. So I'm just saying that we have a problem in South Africa which ordinarily should have been a local problem. There's failure of economy in South Africa, serious one. Now, I will come back to us. I think we are going to solve this problem internally. We'll never use South Africa to solve it. We should come back to Nigeria. Let's talk to ourselves. We have this narrative that has been going on for a very long time, that everywhere else is good except Nigeria. We think we are the only ones going through a bad economy. So people are told, run to South Africa, run to Europe, run to this, run to that, and we have migrated so mass, like mass migration. Now we are seeing that there are problems elsewhere. It's not that the grass is greener elsewhere. If it is greener, somebody made it green. So we come back home, let us treat ourselves the way we want others to treat us. Now we are dealing with this matter as a nation. We are not saying Hausas are killed, Igbos are killed, or Yorubas are killed. It is Nigerians. So why are we not united like that internally? When we treat ourselves so badly, recently a deputy Senate president was beaten abroad. This thing went viral. It went global. Everybody saw it. If we treat ourselves in that manner, other people will be emboldened to see that we don't have respect for the lives of our citizens. I think we should take a cue from beginning to treat ourselves with honor. And I think the world will know how to address us if we begin that way. Thank you, sir.
Thank you very much for bringing up that particular point. How well do we, first of all, respect ourselves? Look at the disgraceful thing that happened to the former Deputy Senate President. This was Nigeria upon Nigeria. That's the way it's going to be seen. Yeah, people can now drill down into the details, but in the first instance. But what Joshua has said, it sort of ties in with something else you mentioned about, look, they would have to show evidence that there is no foot dragging when it comes to upholding the law. For instance, things happen. Where is the evidence of who has been prosecuted for some of those things that have happened? Now, that's going to be an interesting one because I believe personally that we're going to have to dive into the psyche of the ordinary South African. I've explained that there are those who feel embarrassed by this, but many, many, many more don't understand the issue. The failing economy, well, no, so I shouldn't have said it, failing economy. The challenges with the economy, and that has translated into unemployment, a very high unemployment rate. I think I read about 20-something%, a high unemployment rate. Now, in frustration, they don't know the answers. They're looking to the brothers who are around them. And this is Zambians, Zimbabweans, Nigerians, and we get the brunt of the stick. How do we get into the South African psyche vis-a-vis the program you said is one of the options where they begin to reformulate their thinking? How do we get them to do that if they already have this negative attitude? You'll answer that, but a call is coming from South Africa. Abe in Joburg. Good morning, Abe.
Good morning, Akuyori.
Good morning, sir.
Good morning to Mr. Falaki.
Good morning.
Yes, Akuyori, the truth of the matter is there is an internal economic problem in South Africa. Just 2 months ago, over 2,000 people lost their job from Southern Bank of South Africa alone. And just last month, over 1,500 people lost their job through Nedbank of South Africa. So these issues are the ones aggravating to this problem we are seeing today. It's just that, unfortunately, the two governments did not really see this coming. So if they have saw this coming, if they have attacked it on time, we would have escalated to this particular point. So it's like those people, naturally, South African people are angry people. They don't know how to. South African people is like, even when you write a letter to them that they are not paying their debts on time, they can go and jump from 12-story building, or they can kill themselves. So they are not as strong as we Nigerians. We can adapt to any situation easily, and we don't believe that is the next thing for us to happen to us as a Nigeria. But South Africans, they don't mind. The moment they are not a comfort, they don't have to take their own life, and they don't have to take other people's life. So those are the issues that aggravate to this point. But I blame both governments that if they have been proactive enough, we would have gotten to this particular point we are finding ourselves today. But I pray that God will resolve the issue as soon as possible.
Indeed. Thank you very much, Abe, calling in from South Africa. I understand I have to go on a break then. And we'll come back and we'll resume with this. Stay with us, please. We'll be right back. Welcome back, and still with Malaki Ugumadu, President CDHR, and we're still on the South African issue, some fallouts, and we were exploring the options, because this has to be resolved at the end of the day.
One way or the other.
Yes, one way or the other. And you had suggested that maybe some sort of a re-indoctrination process to explain to the people. That's an uphill task, I can imagine. We ourselves locally, oftentimes we will, say that, what is the National Orientation Agency doing about this situation? Why are people thinking in this way? So I imagine they're going to have a similar challenge over that. Nevertheless, no matter how high the mountain, you say it has to be negotiated.
Correct.
That's what you say. It has to be negotiated. South Africans have to change their mindset or come to understand that it is not the immigrants that are causing your problems. But
what makes America tick today is immigrants. So that notion that these are our problem must find its exit way. Otherwise, South Africa is beginning to gradually shut itself and close itself in a way that doesn't enjoy the kind of massive growth that comes with, immigration and so on and so forth. So the world is a global village now. You cannot become a pariah state or isolate yourself from the international global interface.
Do you think in some respects paranoia is setting in, because the deputy police minister in that speech of his that's gone viral has also said that foreigners have taken over a city. Like 80% foreigners and 20% Africans, South Africans are left. So those are that's the kind of narrative that they are pushing out, alongside criminality,
correct,
alongside drug peddling.
Correct.
And
this kind of action feed on such information coming from such quarter. But you will agree that there has been a global condemnation of that statement. To say that it's a statement that touches on serious level of ignorance, and it was a bit insensitive. Perhaps didn't quite understand the mood of the time and the implication of what we were saying, given the reality on the ground. And if anyone accuses him for instigating the people, they won't be too far from the fact. But I had made the earlier point that, look, there's a way, even look around. Any community that does not accept and welcome strangers and visitors suffers serious growth deficiencies. It's here with us. But I'm trying to make this very important point that, look, the South African orientation agencies, whatever they are, here
Whatever they are called,
must live up to their bidding. The reason is simple. There has been serious disconnect regarding what makes us Africans and the shared past experiences we have had in the past, and how that has shaped us as a continent and as a people. And the more you discountenance that, the more we lose our identity. Just look at it. The two leading African countries, Nigeria, South Africa, at daggers drawn, in a manner that seems to defy all we stand for and all we have been together in the past. So perhaps it is a good development that this has come, regardless of the lives that have been lost, which is regrettable and we hope never happen. But we must take full and concrete advantage of what is happening now to deal with this issue first and for all. What has to be done?
Sorry, let me quickly bring in Idowu in Abulegba. Good morning, Idowu.
Yeah, good morning, sir.
Thank you for calling in. Go ahead, please.
With respect to the program, you see, good morning, sir. To me, it's an unfortunate situation in South Africa, and regrettably, we have not had any official statement.
From
unlike the statements
we
which
have
the
heard.
ATC chairman gave yesterday.
Okay.
During his official presentation.
Idowu, there have been official statements.
So many
official
on
statements.
both sides.
From both sides.
Sir, Okuyori. Okay, when the deputy police chief, minister, when he gave the official that statement, that derogatory statement, what has the South African president done? The South African president refused to make any statement.
No.
Do you have anything to disregard this information? No.
But the police minister has since said that, well, what he said is that it is not xenophobia, it is criminality.
There's nothing you expect him to say other than that.
Okay.
Simply because he has to protect the international relations between South Africa and Nigeria.
Okay.
That's one. Secondly, if any government official in Nigeria, say for instance, I didn't mean it was Femi or any of our police chiefs that made such a statement, will they have resigned? South Africans have spoken their mind on what they want to do. It's not left to us to take drastic action against the South African government so that this thing will be stopped. Thank you. Good morning, sir.
Okay, well, thank you very much. Well,
please, can I make this very important point? And that is on the need for the South African community to appraise and understand what we both share. I am a member, in short, an executive member of the Movement for the Liberation of Western Sahara. It's under the chairmanship of Professor Ibrahim Gambari, coordinated by Dr. Dikbo Fashino, former ASU president. Both the Nigerian Labour Congress and ASU are involved. Now, we have come to the point where we insisted that, look, for whatever we do supporting the people of Western Sahara, it should be documented. Because what has played out is that over time, and this is about 40 years after, there is a serious disconnect, historical disconnect, from what went into the liberation of South Africa and other African continents, and the reality of the time now. We have all noted that there are serious economic imbalances and disconnections, which has thrown up some challenges that are unable to be effectively handled by the rank and file, so to speak. But there's a need to have, by now, South African media ought to suffuse the environment with the historical stories of the relationship that Nigeria and South Africa had, particularly in the heydays.
As an indication that they want to tackle this problem
way,
effectively.
That way you'll be isolating these people who are perpetrating this sin and dealing them as criminals who they are.
Good morning, Mr. George, and thank you for calling in and indeed for holding on.
Thank you, Uncle Yori. Good morning.
Good morning.
And good morning to Malak as well.
Good morning, Mr. George.
Uncle Yori, the statement that has come from the South African government now goes prove what I said earlier, that the government of South Africa is surreptitiously complicit in this xenophobic attack against our people. For negotiation at all, they are saying, no, we are paying compensation to anybody. Now, I'm not satisfied with the action of the Nigerian government, the action that the Nigerian government has taken. If I were President Buhari, the first thing I would have done is to send South African High Commissioner back home and recall my ambassador until the government of South Africa demonstrates seriousness in addressing this issue of killing my people. The man that is over 30 cars were burnt in his car shop, and all those businesses we see that are being burnt down. How does the South African government expect those people to ever recover in life? The Nigerian government, in my view, should seize the South African businesses that are here, sell it to Nigerians, use the initial process to compensate those who have incurred so many losses and lives in South Africa. If the South African government does not, agree to paying compensation, I do not agree with the argument that Nigerians should come home. There is no government, there is no country in this world that is self-sufficient in everything. People will need to travel to other countries. In America, even in developed countries, Uncle Yori, there are Americans, there are Indians, there are Chinese people, there are Britons in other countries doing business or visitation.
Yeah.
You cannot tell Nigerians not to go out. Nigeria alone cannot contain Nigerians because of the potential that we carry.
Okay.
And if the people in South Africa that we are seeing in video clips, Uncle Yori, how many of them are employed by South African government? How many of them are working for government agencies in South Africa? They're industrial people who are making their month's business. Is it Nigerians who say that the South Africans should be lazy? They are adding value to the economy of South Africa.
Okay.
So you can't say they should come home because of the attack. Are we not going to travel out yet?
All right,
The
then.
government should do more. That's my point I'm making, sir.
Thank you very much,
And in
Mr.
doing more, the government must find a way of revamping our economy. I think this is the provenance of all of this. It's not just about South Africa. Look at the way our citizens are killed all across board. Only 2 weeks ago, the Committee for Defense of Human Rights raised a serious alarm over the death sentence imposed on one Olufemi Suleiman in Saudi Arabia. Over a matter he knew nothing about, didn't understand the language, yet he was made to sign a statement that written in Arab that was interpreted to be a confessional statement by the trial judge without a lawyer.
Okay.
So our people are killed, avoidably all across the globe.
Okay, we're going to have to draw the curtains on this because it's an ongoing subject. The Ministry of Foreign Affairs, the President, and we're all working on this whole matter, and we hope for a happy resolution. But as Mr. George made the point, where do they get off saying that their laws don't permit compensation? The Nigerian business, car lot, that lost all of those cars, 30 cars, but left that. Now, the other thing that's also in the news, switching subjects, is the P&ID affair, Process and Industrial Development. That's a very curious name. I don't know if you saw this Business Week, Bloomberg Business Week long-form investigative piece that came out yesterday. It was circulating all over the internet. Long and short of it is that, in fact, the caption of the article says it all, is one of the world's biggest lawsuits based on a sham. I had the Minister of Information and Strategy here. I think it was it Monday or was it last week? And he had expressed doubts that at the moment he's not entirely sure that contract from day one was ever intended to be concluded, engaged with. Now the expose that comes out from all of that is that even General Danjuma was brought into the whole matter. That is to say, General Danjuma has since been saying that the very $40 million that P&ID actually, was claiming that it had invested and was basing its claim upon, never mind that it's now got to 9.6 billion, 9.2 billion naira. General Danjuma says that, retired General Danjuma, billionaire, former defense minister, he has said that his firm, very interesting name, Titakuru, I think it is Titakuru, petrochemicals, that he paid $40 million, not the guys, and that he actually at the time knew that, oh dear, the people I had engaged as consultants were about to steal my project. So all of that was going on. And the big question now is that, let's go back to the caption of the article. Is the world's biggest lawsuit built on a sham? Did they want to 419 Nigeria? Now, part of the fallout of all of that is that the Attorney General is saying that Central Bank and about 13 ministries, you can see it in the papers this morning, let me have any details of any contract that is worth $5 million in your office.
We needn't come to the point as a country where about, I understand, almost 25 to 28% of our budget, of our annual budget, is now, at the risk of being dispensed to settle debt. We needn't come to that point before the country begins to work the way it ought to. We have a couple of legislations that makes it mandatory that the Attorney General of the Federation must be part of the process that leads to committing Nigeria into such obligations. So we mustn't get to the point where there is one arbitration award in London in which Nigeria had sent lawyers, in which, and make no mistake about it.
There was even the allegation that it's like we were reluctant to pursue the matter.
So on and so. But please, if you add all of what you said with the fact that the substantive Attorney General of the Federation, as at that time, that was in 2010, I'm talking of Michael Andwoka, SAN, came out clearly to say that he had no idea. He was neither a part nor knew what happened with respect to that transaction. The question would be, who else should know of a transaction that commits Nigeria to the tune of the figure we are hearing now, other than the Attorney General of the Federation? Considering that the obligation of the country would arise from legal engagements, i.e. contracts. You're also aware, at least the whole episode have shown, that the critical segments of our petroleum industry that deals with the gas, sector, which is the subject matter of this contract, we're also not party. The central bank governor had come out to say that he had looked through the records and he's unable to relate with this whole transaction. So what more needs to be said?
So no surprise that EFCC says it is investigating it vigorously.
So now in doing that, let us know and let Nigeria appreciate that, look, even if we come out of this, this is almost like exposing the security of this country. This is similar to saying that mercenaries came into this country, wreaked havoc, and no person knew about it. It will mean that we're all on our own. The very popular or your aphorism that we use, we are all on our own. A situation in which that magnitude of our national budget could be discussed in the way an Attorney General comes out and says, I didn't know anything. Many people come out to say, this company never even existed, that it was incorporated for the purpose of this.
Exactly.
Others say it has never been involved in this kind of transaction before. Yet, it got up to this point where we're now discussing that we owe liability.
Well, in that sense, it's probably, I know, as you started by saying that, how did we let it get to this point? But now, having arrived at this horrible point, at least the Attorney General's action, for whatever it is worth, it does show a sort of a never again attitude. Say, fine, now that we've seen this, we just have to get on. Better late than never. So now they're doing the needful. Now they're doing the right things. But the point that, inter alia, you made the point that apparently everybody that could have shouted by way of check and balance, everybody that could have, interjected in the matter, was not aware, was not told. It was hidden away. I'm guessing, was hidden away.
So the way the state will show serious resentment or disapproval is to say that, yes, it's good that we now focus on what we ought to have done and what we should be doing. But everyone who participated in this, who brought about the effectual consummation of this contract, must at least explain to the Nigerian government and the people how, unravel the mystery.
What their part in this was.
And then there must be consequences.
Yes.
If there are no consequences that of the same magnitude as the problem they have created, chances are that the same culture of impunity which we have institutionalized in this country will become more consolidated and will run into
I would wager that this is one of those where we can depend on consequences if they get to the bottom. As I said, I wager, because I'm a Nigerian, and we've also both witnessed so many things that have not had consequences. Mazi Okoroafo in Arochukwu, I greet you.
Good morning, Sayori. Good morning, Sir Malaki.
Good morning.
Happy weekend, sir.
Indeed.
Honestly speaking, Sayori, you see, this issue of Irish fame, P and IT issue, what I would suggest to the federal government, this is issue of a lot of contracts. We need men and women that are guru in a lot of contracts to handle this issue, irrespective of political parties notwithstanding. Because you saw what happened with Nigeria and the Bakassi issue. What happened at the end of the day? Because the lawyers we took to that place now, I don't know what happened now. At the end of the day, the case was given to who? To Cameroon. And what happened to the Cameroon? Cameroon people have to bring French, their masters to come and to stand by with them 247 in that place. Up to today, you cannot trespass that very place at Bakassi up to today. Ask anybody. After that judgment, because they know that if they didn't bring the French troop down, and that Nigeria will come and ravage with that French dominated that place. So we need men like Oga Malak is just talking about that. People, at least he knows people that are strong in terms of a lot of contract. Let them come into this issue so that they will sit down, collect the case as the AHG have said that, sit down, study it, and come out with their own facts. Now let's come back to Nigeria and the South Africa. See, we Nigerians, we have to look inwards. First, the issue of indigenous and non-indigenous in places in Nigeria is what we are seeing in South Africa. That is to say, we should solve that issue here in Nigeria as a country. Because people see what is happening in Nigeria and when the issue of comes to Nigeria. Because we are Nigerians, because what is happening in the media or on the media is what is a duplicate copy of what it has happened in South Africa. Because when I saw some people on the Al Jazeera, they were complaining. There are a lot of stories in that South Africa which we have not gone into deep. We don't. That's the fact. What happened there is so terrible. So it is now for us Nigerians now sit down, think positively, think inward now, and stop blaming anybody. Thank God it has the son of our brother that died, President Mugabe, may he rest in peace. Thank you very much. Have a blessed day in Lagos.
Thank you very much, Mazi Okoroafo. We'll also draw the curtain on that particular conversation. It's another ongoing conversation. But the news broke very early this morning where Africa lost former President Robert Mugabe, who passed on in exile at the ripe old age of 95, and not a gray hair in sight from the last time.
Well,
so it's the end of an era, right?
Yes, and I'm sure that that will open a very serious vista for a critical review of the role that the man has played. Eventually, he ended up in a very controversial manner, but the activities of Mugabe as a freedom fighter cannot be displaced in the history of Zimbabwe.
We've run out of time, but so suffice it to say, how do we say to all that have passed on, rest in peace. Robert Mugabe passed on at the age of 95 in exile in Singapore. That's our program today. I want to thank Malaki Ogumado, President CDHR, for coming in and giving us his perspectives on, actually 2 or 3 subjects. We just started off with, this xenophobic attacks in South Africa.
Ended with Mugabe.
And moved into P and ID and ended up with Mugabe.
Thank you for the opportunity. Always my pleasure.
So that's our program. Please join us on Monday when This Morning on TVC resumes. I am Yori Folarin. Do have a great weekend.